They thought it was just training. Another day, another drill. But there was something different in the way Valor looked at her. Mira, the quiet girl in the wheelchair at the edge of the ring. Something ancient, something protective. Nobody else noticed. Nobody except Theo, the junior handler cleaning the kennels. He'd seen Valor tremble in his sleep, heard the way he whimpered when Mira cried. And now, here he was, refusing to bite, refusing to break. In that moment, under sterile lights and cold stares, a dog rewrote the rules, and someone hit record. The morning mist rolled low across the training fields of Ashridge K9 Institute, curling like breath over the frost-tipped grass. From the balcony of his corner office, Graham Caldwell stood with hands clasped tightly behind his back, surveying the estate with the cold precision of a man who had traded affection for aesthetics a long time ago. Ashridge had been built by his grandfather, a pioneer in police and military K9 operations, and polished into prestige by Graham's father. Now, under Graham's command, it gleamed with corporate efficiency. Every kennel was state-of-the-art, every handler dressed in matching navy jackets bearing the white Ashridge insignia, a leaping German shepherd overlaid with the Institute's Latin motto, Fidelis usque ad mortem, faithful unto death, a virtue Graham appreciated more in dogs than in people. Behind him, the muffled clatter of a clipboard hitting glass announced the arrival of Emily Hart, his assistant. "Morning report, sir," she said briskly, placing the folder on his desk. She hesitated before speaking again. "Everything's prepped for the Graves walkthrough. Kennel 1 and 2 have been deep cleaned. The therapy dog handlers briefed. Cameron's sensory tour will begin by 11. Graham didn't turn. And Valor?" Emily exhaled slowly, careful, still showing behavioral resistance. "Rex requested an extra session this morning. Is he still growling?" "Yes, sir. Mostly at command cues, especially the visual ones." Graham's jaw tightened. "He can't be unpredictable, not today, especially not in front of Graves." He turned finally, brushing invisible lint from his suit sleeve. Every detail of his appearance was intentional. Gray, tie knotted precisely, tailored jacket sharp enough to cut, hair combed back with calculated restraint. His reflection in the window behind him was less a man and more a figurehead, smooth, composed, unassailable. "Rex has everything he needs?" he asked. Emily nodded, her eyes flicking briefly toward the locked drawer in Graham's desk, the one that held the modified collar. "He does." There was a pause, one of those small silences that held more weight than any raised voice. Emily cleared. "We're selling control, precision, order. What Graves sees here will be the face of his investment." "And Mira?" The word hit like a fault line beneath glass. Graham's gaze hardened. "She'll be where she always is, out of sight. This isn't her world." Emily hesitated, then bowed her head and left, the soft click of the door barely audible. Left alone, Graham moved to his desk and opened a drawer, not the locked one. Inside was a photo from years ago. Himself, his late wife Elise, and a toddler in his arms, Mira, before the accident, before the wheelchair, before the truth about her paternity had unspooled like a thread he couldn't rewind. He stared at it for a moment before returning it to the shadows. Outside, the fog was lifting. From this height, Ashridge looked perfect, and that was exactly how it needed to appear. A few minutes later, Graham strode across the cobblestone walk toward the main demonstration yard. Staff straightened at his presence, offering tight nods and clipped greetings. He returned none of them. His mind was already elsewhere, calculating pathways, timelines, optics. He stopped beside Kennel 3, hands folded behind his back, as he observed two handlers working with a young Belgian Malinois. Posture's sloppy, he noted without looking at them. Heel command needs sharper turn radius. One handler flushed. Yes, sir. As Graham walked on, he caught sight of a student sweeping the brick perimeter. Theo Morales, the veterinary intern, polite, earnest, and perpetually watching. Graham didn't trust him. The boy looked too much, saw too much, especially when it came to Valor. The name alone was starting to become a problem. Officially, Valor was a retired combat canine with a history of loyalty under fire. Unofficially, he was the dog Elise had once called her soul's shadow. After her death, Graham had accepted him, not out of sentiment, but out of obligation. Elise's final request had been for her daughter and her dog to remain together. So Graham had obliged for a time, but now that bond between Mira and Valor had begun to interfere with everything. The dog refused new commands. He stood between Mira and others, especially strangers. He barked during select sessions, ignored Rex's whistle cues. And worst of all, he made Graham feel like he was the outsider. He reached the end of the field and paused. From here, he could see the demonstration arena. Flags staked around its edges, fresh sod rolled onto the central ring. It looked pristine, controlled, but control, he knew, was an illusion. One snarl from a dog at the wrong moment, one photo op of a little girl in a wheelchair beside an unstable canine, and Graves would pull the plug. Graham wouldn't allow that. This was his legacy now. And nothing, not a child, not a memory, not a mutt, was going to ruin it. The untamed silence of things left to grow wild. Here, in the shelter of half-bloomed rosebushes and wind-bent lavender, sat Mira, age 7. Sketchbook balanced on her knees, legs tucked beneath a wool blanket stitched with pine cones and stars. Her wheelchair, custom-made forest green with matte black wheels, was nestled in the dappled sun. She didn't seem to notice the chill in the air or the way clouds were starting to veil the sun overhead. Her pencil moved with gentle, deliberate strokes. Each motion was slow but certain, drawing the outline of a dog. Not just any dog. The ears were too large, the back slightly arched in alertness, the tail low and sweeping. A German shepherd, mid-turn. She was trying to capture something not of posture, but of presence. From across the field, Theo Morales pushed a cart of mulch toward the greenhouse. His steps slowed when he saw her. It wasn't the first time he'd seen Mira sketching alone, but something about the way her small fingers curled around the pencil today made him pause. Her expression was focused, but not entirely serene. There was sadness, too, quiet, unbothered, like someone who had learned early how to carry it without spilling. He watched from a distance, respectfully. She didn't know him well. Few people at Ashridge did. Most of the staff spoke about her in passing, in whispers, not cruelly, just carefully, like she was a part of the architecture, delicate and meant to be admired from afar. The screen door creaked open. Graham Caldwell's shoes clicked across the stone path with the tempo of someone who hadn't visited this side of the property in days. Mira didn't look up. Her pencil continued tracing a curve, one ear slightly folded. Graham slowed as he passed her bench. His eyes flicked once toward her sketchpad, then away, like acknowledging her existence was enough to fulfill the requirements of civility. He didn't speak. Neither did she. He adjusted his cufflink. "You're out early." "I like the morning light," she replied, voice soft but clear. Silence again. Graham gave a tight nod, the kind that ends conversations. "Stay warm. The Graveses are coming today. No interruptions." It wasn't a warning. Not overtly. Just a reminder that even her presence had to remain invisible when things really mattered. Then he walked on, already pulling out his phone. Mira watched him go with no expression at all. It wasn't that she didn't care. She just knew better now. She turned the page in her sketchbook, started again. From the hedgerow at the edge of the garden came the low rustle of paws through leaves. A shadow bounded into view, then slowed, ears pricking forward. Valor. He trotted over without hesitation, didn't smile. But her hand dropped immediately to the space behind his ear, scratching in slow, practiced circles. "You missed the ears," she whispered. Theo watched, still from a distance, unmoving now. There was something sacred in how the dog had approached. He'd seen Valor in the training rings, rigid and wary under Rex Dunn's commands. He'd seen the twitch in his shoulder when he heard the wrong tone, the way he scanned exits even when standing still. But here, he softened. He let Mira's small fingers graze the scar near his left temple, didn't flinch when she traced the base of his collar. He closed his eyes. Theo couldn't help but feel something shift in his chest. A pressure. Not sadness. Not exactly. Something quieter. Reverence, maybe. Mira picked up her pencil again. She began sketching with Valor still in her lap. Only now, the lines came easier, less forced. Her tongue peeked out slightly at the corner of her lips, a habit of concentration. She looked up at the dog's face, then back at the page. She wasn't drawing a generic shepherd anymore. She was drawing him. "You remember my mom, don't you?" she whispered, too soft for Theo to hear. Valor stirred, but didn't move away. "Sometimes I think you miss her even more than I do." The wind lifted, rustling dry leaves across the stone path. Somewhere a bell rang faintly. First class of the morning session. The estate was waking, but this corner of it remained unchanged. Mira placed her sketchbook down and leaned back in her chair, eyes tilted toward the sky. "They think you're broken," she murmured, "but I think you're just tired of pretending." Valor shifted closer. His breath was warm against her side. Behind them, Theo finally moved, wheeled his cart forward. He passed slowly, not wanting to intrude. But Mira looked up just as he did. Their eyes met. She didn't smile, not really, but she nodded. Once. Theo nodded back. A moment passed, then he moved on. In the garden, girl and dog sat in silence again. But it wasn't an empty silence. It was the kind that builds something, stone by stone, until one day, when you're ready, you look up and realize it's become a home. The kitchen at Ashridge was built for function, not charm. Stainless steel counters, high-back stools, and windows that swallowed the evening light in long golden ribbons. Slowly, her knees aching from a long day. The letter was dated 6 months ago. The handwriting was unmistakable. Elise's, slanted and careful, every stroke imbued with the same deliberate grace she'd carried into war zones, boardrooms, and motherhood. If you're reading this, it means I've run out of time. Don't let Mira grow up thinking silence is strength. Let her see the world as it is, not as Graham dresses it. And Lena, give Valor a chance. He's more than what they trained him to be. He was with me in places no child should ever hear about. But he never gave up. He'll protect her, even from those you'd least suspect. Lena swallowed. She hadn't wanted to open the safe again, not since the funeral, not since Graham stood beside the polished mahogany casket, eyes dry, mouth set in a performance of loss. Mira, barely old enough to understand death, had gripped Lena's hand and whispered, "She's not gone. I still feel her in the house." The safe had held documents, photos, and the sealed envelope that accompanied Valor's transfer. There was a certificate marking his retirement from military service, and a brief note from Elise's lawyer confirming the unusual clause in her will. Valor was not to be sent to Graham's program, but to the house directly. For Mira. He had arrived quietly. No ceremony, no welcome. They'd opened the back of the van, and there he stood, a shadow of muscle and memory, fur dulled from travel, eyes that flinched before they focused. He didn't bark, didn't resist, just stepped down slowly. Like each motion was a test he wasn't sure he'd pass. Mira had been waiting on the porch. She didn't reach out, didn't speak. She just looked at him, and he, after a moment's hesitation, looked back, then padded forward and placed his head against her knee. Lena had never seen anything like it. She picked up the envelope now, running her fingers along the seal once more. A second letter, written earlier, before the cancer took Elise's ability to speak easily. "I trust him with her, more than I trust her father. Valor knows what loyalty means. He's not perfect, but neither is anyone who's truly loved." Upstairs, floorboards creaked softly. A gentle thump, the sound of paws settling against hardwood. Lena stood, left her mug untouched, and climbed the stairs without turning on the light. Mira's room was warm. Stars hung from the ceiling, painted in faint luminescent green. The soft hum of her breathing filled the air, the rise and fall of her chest steady beneath the quilt her mother had stitched from old arm floor, and his breathing grew ragged. Nightmare. Lena reached down and brushed a hand gently along his back. His fur was warm, rough with dried salt from old sweat or stress. At her touch, his body jolted, but only for a second. Then he stilled, his eyes opened, wild for a beat, then aware. He looked up at her with a mix of guilt and shame she recognized instantly. She'd seen it in soldiers. "Hey," she whispered, "it's just us." He didn't move, but his head dipped lower until it touched the floor again, nearer to the foot of Mira's bed. Lena crouched beside him, her knees protesting, but she stayed down anyway. "You never left the war, did you?" she murmured. "They just stopped calling it that." Valor blinked slowly. His tail gave a muted thump against the floor once. Mira stirred above them, one hand shifting to hang over the edge of the bed. Her fingers brushed against the top of Valor's shoulder. That was all it took. The dog inched closer, positioning himself so her hand rested against his neck, his body forming a barrier between her and the room. A silent vow. One he had made long before this night, and would keep long after. Lena sat for a while longer, watching the two of them in the dim glow of the star stickers. The air smelled faintly of lavender and graphite. Mira had been sketching again. Down the hall, Graham's door clicked shut. Lena stood and gently pulled the blanket up over Mira's shoulder. "You were meant to protect her," she whispered to Valor. "Even when he forgets, she matters." The dog didn't lift his head, but his ears, still twitching faintly from dreams he couldn't shake, stilled at the sound of her voice. And in that quiet space, between scars and silence, Lena Rowan made a decision. Tomorrow She would start asking questions Graham wouldn't want her to. And Valor would not be left alone in his nightmares. Not anymore. The study at Ashridge was a monument to curated elegance. Dark wood shelves framed with antique law books, a fireplace that hadn't been lit in years, and a desk polished to a sterile sheen. On the far wall, on the framed photograph of 3 German shepherds mid-stride, ears forward, muscles taut. Beneath it, a bronze plaque, "Obedience is order." Graham Caldwell adjusted the knot of his navy tie. Even though there was no one in the room to see it, the screen before him flickered as the video call connected. For a moment, all that filled the frame was glare. Then came the angular face of Lucian Graves. Lucian looked like the kind of man who didn't blink unless it's what he practiced as warmth. "It's always a pleasure to speak with visionaries." A pause. Lucian neither acknowledged nor returned the compliment. "I'll be direct," Lucian continued. "My son Cameron is 7, diagnosed with sensory processing disorder and social communication difficulties. Traditional therapy has limited effects." "I'm sorry to hear that," Graham said smoothly. "Ashridge has seen remarkable breakthroughs with neurodiverse children. Our dogs are bred and trained with emotional nuance in mind." Lucian leaned forward slightly. "I've read your papers and your financial reports." "Ah, so it wasn't just about Cameron." "Cameron doesn't respond to therapists," Lucian said. "But animals, dogs in particular, he's drawn to them. He doesn't make eye contact with adults, but with dogs, he meets their gaze without hesitation." Graham folded his hands. "Children like Cameron often form bonds through nonverbal pathways. It's part of what makes animal therapy so powerful." Lucian studied him for a beat. "I've also read about your daughter. Mira, is it?" Graham's jaw twitched before he could stop it. "Yes," he said carefully. "I understand one of your dogs has developed a strong therapeutic bond with her. A case study in your earlier literature even referenced a child in a wheelchair. I assume that was Mira?" He forced a laugh, dry and controlled. "My daughter isn't involved in the training side of things. She interacts with some of the retired units. It's more familial, not formal." Lucian's gaze didn't waver. "Still, a compelling anecdote. Cameron read about her in a magazine profile. He keeps a sketch of a German shepherd in his notebook. Named it Valor." Graham's fingers tightened beneath the desk. So that's how far the story had traveled. He had allowed one article to be published, months ago. A human interest piece about Ashridge's legacy. The journalist had been granted limited access, a single image of Mira in the garden, Valor resting at her feet. It was meant to soften the brand, not define it. "We prefer not to make Mira the face of Ashridge," Graham said flatly. "Why?" Lucian asked. "From what I've seen, she's the most authentic thing about it." Graham leaned back, tone shifting to measured diplomacy. "I assure you, Mr. Graves, Ashridge's success lies in its systems. Our model works because we focus on repeatable behavior, consistency. Mira's case is unique, but not replicable. Valor, as you needs to be more than optics." Graham nodded. "Naturally, we don't operate on sentiment." "Good," Lucian said, "because Cameron doesn't need a mascot. He needs a partner, someone who can meet him where words can't. If Ashridge can deliver that, I'm prepared to fund a new facility wing, designed around neuro-adaptive therapy dogs. The words hung in the air like a test. Graham's mind was already 3 moves ahead. A new wing would draw attention, reporters, advocates, perhaps even regulators. And that meant Ashridge's deeper practices. The use of outdated methods, experimental conditioning trials, would have to be hidden even more carefully. Still, the money was too good. "We'd be honored," Graham said, masking calculation with gratitude. And perhaps, one day, Cameron could even meet Mira. I'm sure they'd get along. The lie tasted bitter. Lucian offered a rare smile. He'd like that. They exchanged formalities, scheduled an in-person demonstration, and ended the call. As the screen went dark, Graham's posture deflated by a fraction. He opened a drawer and pulled out Mira's magazine photo, the one they'd agreed not to publish widely. Valor was half-curled at her side, gaze not at the camera, but at her. Protective, grounded. It had gone viral in the wrong circles. He stared at the photo for a long moment, before slipping it back into the drawer. A knock. He turned. Theo stood in the doorway, holding a clipboard. "Final kennel check for the evening, sir. Anything you need logged?" "No," Graham said curtly. "That'll be all." But before Theo left, Graham added, "And remind the staff to limit the child's presence during visitor hours. We're a facility, not a petting zoo." Theo hesitated. "Mira's. She helps some of the dogs stay calm." Graham's eyes sharpened. "She distracts from the brand." Theo nodded silently and left. Graham turned back to the empty screen. Behind the polished image, the cracks were widening. And if Lucian Graves wanted Mira to be the story, that would need managing. Very carefully. The wind had picked up over the Ashridge training fields, bending the pine line in slow, whispering arcs. The sun hung low, casting long shadows over the gravel road leading to the old operations shed, officially decommissioned, unofficially off the books. Graham Caldwell stepped out of his black SUV, the tires crackling against the frost-bitten earth. He glanced at his watch, then toward the corrugated steel building ahead. The place smelled of rust and bleach, even before the door opened. A mechanical bark echoed faintly from somewhere inside. He didn't knock. Inside, beneath a dim yellow bulb, stood Rex Dunn, broad-shouldered, half-shaved, with a neck that had seen more sun than
"Late," Rex said without looking up, focused on rewiring a trigger box mounted to a choke collar. "I'm here," Graham replied, voice cold. Rex finished with the wires, then finally turned. One eye was slightly off-center, a side effect of a blast in Kandahar. It gave him a look that was always half suspicious, even when he was relaxed. But Rex rarely relaxed. "I didn't think you'd call again," Rex said, wiping grease from his fingers. "Thought you went soft. Therapy dogs, children's brochures, the cuddly rebrand." Graham stepped closer, lowering his voice. "That's the exterior. This," he nodded toward the table where 3 collars lay, each tagged with serial numbers, "is what keeps the investors believing it works." Rex snorted. "Still addicted to control, huh?" "I'm addicted to predictability." The silence stretched between them like a frayed wire. "I need a demonstration," Graham finally said. "Something visceral, controlled on the surface, but volatile underneath. A display of obedience that flirts with chaos." Rex narrowed his gaze. "You don't want a dog. You want a weapon that smiles." Graham didn't blink. "Precisely." Rex tapped the collar. "That kind of programming takes time, conditioning, rewiring. You can't just slap a shock unit on a dog and expect morality to bend with voltage." "I'm not asking for morality. I'm asking for behavior." Rex smirked. then pulled a folder from a dented filing cabinet. He tossed it onto the table. "You mean him." Graham opened it. Inside was a file marked Valor, Unit 27A, K9 Division, declassified partial. A photo was paper-clipped to the top. A younger, sharper Valor, jaws clenched around a padded sleeve in mid-strike. "He was Elise Rowan's," Rex said. "One of the best. Refused to be broken. That's why I respected him." Graham's lips thinned. "Can he be reprogrammed?" "Reprogrammed?" Rex tilted his head. "He's bonded. That makes him dangerous." Graham didn't flinch. "Dangerous can be useful." "But he imprinted on the girl." Rex continued. "The wheelchair kid. That's the root system. You rip that up, he'll unravel. Then unravel him just enough," Graham said flatly. "I don't need him to be stable. I need him to be impressive, aggressive, under command." Rex was quiet for a long moment. "He's already showing signs of trauma," he muttered. "Twitches in sleep, avoidance patterns, but still obedient, which means he's vulnerable, useful, or unpredictable, which makes me liable." Graham pulled out a checkbook. Slowly, deliberately, he scribbled a number on the top slip, tore it off, and laid it face down on the table. Rex didn't reach just slightly. "You're serious?" "I'm not in the business of sentiment." "You were, once, when Elise was alive." Graham stiffened. "That was before the institution started bleeding red." Rex folded the check and tucked it into his back pocket. "You know," he said, walking over to a steel locker and pulling out a training sleeve, "there's something off about this. You used to believe in the work." "I still do." "No," Rex muttered, slipping on the sleeve. "You believe in optics. That's different." Graham turned, hand already on the door. "Just get it done," Rex called after him. "He won't bite the girl, not even under pressure." "He doesn't have to," Graham said without turning. "He just has to make the audience think he could." Then he stepped out into the wind, the door slamming shut behind him. Inside, Rex looked down at the photo of Valor again. "Poor bastard," he muttered. Outside, the wind picked up, rustling the dead leaves along the edge of the training field. Somewhere beyond the trees, the bell of the chapel rang once, low and hollow, like a warning too old to be heard anymore. The hum of fluorescent lights buzzed faintly in the kennel corridor, blending with the soft scratch of paws against concrete and the muted whine of a wind that never quite left Ashridge's hilltop. Afternoon light filtered through the slats in the high windows, casting lines across the floor like a quiet kind of prison. Theo Harron moved carefully between crates, his gloved hands checking water bowls and latching gates with muscle memory born of habit. He was 19, maybe 20, his badge didn't say, but his eyes were older, quietly observant. He wore the same beat-up hoodie under his staff vest every day, and he walked like someone trying not to make noise, even when he was allowed to. He reached Valor's crate, crouched, and gave a low, reassuring whistle. "Hey, boy, you okay?" Valor didn't bark, hadn't all week, but his ears twitched. He stared past Theo toward the far wall, as if listening for something just beyond the edge of human sound. His tail thumped once, briefly, then fell still again. Theo frowned. He'd seen military dogs before, calculated, intense, but this was different. Valor looked distracted, guarded, like he was holding his breath around humans now. A faint creak echoed down the hallway. Theo straightened. The maintenance door, usually locked, hung slightly ajar. That was odd. No one but senior staff used that corridor. It led to the back lot, the tool shed, and the barn where the off-the-record sessions were held. He glanced back toward the kennels, hesitated, then slipped off his gloves. The voices reached him before the door fully opened. "He imprinted on the girl, that's the root system." That voice, gravelly, ex-military.
Theo knew it from staff. Another voice cut in. Lower, clipped, Graham Caldwell. Then unravel him just enough. He doesn't need to be stable. He needs to be impressive. Theo froze. His hand hovered near the doorframe. A plastic mop bucket rested beside the threshold, a prop now. Dangerous can be useful, Graham continued. There was silence, and then the sound of paper sliding across a surface. Theo leaned closer. The conversation was quiet, but sharp, like a scalpel, glinting under the wrong kind of light. He won't bite the girl, not even under pressure, Rex said. He remembers. He doesn't have to bite her, Graham replied. He just has to make the audience think he could. Theo's stomach knotted. Footsteps shifted, closer. He slipped back, quick and quiet, and crouched behind the industrial water heater as the door opened. Graham walked past him, talking into his Bluetooth earpiece, already dictating notes. Theo didn't breathe until the hall fell silent again. He stood there a long time, before he finally exhaled. Then pulled his phone from his pocket, not to call, but to open the voice recorder app. That night, he started a folder labeled Ashridge, Unofficial. The next morning, Valor didn't come when called, not out of disobedience, but reluctance. Theo noticed it immediately. The dog's body tensed, as if bracing for something unseen. His eyes, usually alert, darted left and right, like he expected pain. During training, Valor froze mid-run and refused to approach a padded mannequin. When Rex raised his voice, the dog flinched. Theo, pretending to tidy leashes, pressed record again. By the end of the week, he had 3 audio files, each capturing something wrong. An electric whine, a sharp yelp, a muttered curse. Rex's voice low, commanding. Graham's voice cooler, calculating. Theo kept the files hidden in a cloud folder under a fake email, just in case. He didn't know exactly what they were doing to Valor, but he knew enough, and more than that. He knew how it was affecting Mira. He saw her in the garden one afternoon, the sketchbook resting in her lap untouched. Her hands usually flew across the page, always drawing Valor mid-run or curled beside her chair. But today she just sat there, staring at the empty grass. Theo approached slowly. "Hey." Mira looked up. Her eyes were puffy, rimmed red. She forced a smile, then gave up halfway through it. "He doesn't come anymore," she whispered. "Valor." She nodded. "He still sleeps in my room, but he doesn't dream with me." Theo swallowed. "Do you trust me?" he asked quietly. Mira looked at him, eyes wide, vulnerable. She didn't answer, just nodded. He stood. "Then hang in there. He's still your dog. No one can undo that." As he walked away, he heard the scratch of pencil returning to paper. That night, Theo added a new note to his log. Day 17. Valor resists training, flinches at Rex, whimpers in sleep. Mira showing signs of emotional regression. Graham ordered remote shock calibration. Sounded like he expected resistance. He saved the file, encrypted it, and stared at the glowing screen. He was just a kennel tech, barely an adult. No power, no influence, but he could witness. And sometimes, the first revolution begins with the quiet decision to start keeping receipts. The morning fog sat low over the Ashridge grounds, curling like breath over cold earth. Trees stood half-shrouded, their outlines blurred in the mist, and somewhere in the distance, a hawk called once, then silence. In the side courtyard, beneath the sugar maples that had only begun to yellow, Valor was pacing, back and forth, not trotting, not exploring, pacing. His nails clicked softly on the stone path. His tail was rigid, not tucked, but held unnaturally still, like a flag forgotten to flap. Every few steps he'd stop, ears pricked forward, growl low in his throat as he stared into a patch of empty air. Then he'd bark. Once, short, sharp, as if warning something no one else could see. From her perch in the window above, Mira watched everything. She didn't flinch at the bark. She knew it wasn't meant for her. Instead, she pressed her hand against the glass pane. "He's scared," she whispered to no one. "He's trying to tell us." Later that afternoon, Lena Rowan found her niece in the solarium, her sketchbook lying open across her knees. But instead of her usual looping pencil lines, there was only a single image. Valor standing rigid, his head turned as if growling at something just outside the page's edge. Lena frowned. "Sweetheart," she said gently, "how long has Valor been acting this way?" Mira didn't look up. "Since they started taking him away." "Who's they?" Mira shrugged, but there was something in her shoulders, tight, guarded. "The man with the loud voice. He smells like metal and burnt wires." Lena's throat tightened. "Do you mean Mr. Dunn?" Mira nodded. Then slowly, from the side pouch of her wheelchair, she pulled out something wrapped in a crumpled sweater. "I found this before Ashridge." She traced the contours of the collar, checking weight, placement. Then she turned it over and saw the underside stitching. Mil-Spec Control Unit, Model D12, Behavioral Recalibration, Canine Division. Her stomach dropped. She looked up at Mira, who was watching her now with wide, searching eyes. "Where exactly did you find this?" "In the barn, in a drawer under the table, the one with the duct tape." Lena's voice turned flat. "And you didn't tell anyone?" Mira's eyes watered slightly. "I told Valor." He looked at it and backed away. Then he tried to nudge it into the fireplace. Lena exhaled slowly. Her mind ran ahead, calculating. The collar wasn't just a training aid. It was a shock trigger unit, coded for remote stimulation, illegal for use in civilian canine therapy programs, and absolutely banned from facilities housing children. She ran a thumb over the scratch across the transmitter's side, burn marks, as if someone had already tested it. Hard, the implications coiled in her gut like cold metal. Valor's sudden anxiety, his barking at corners, his refusal to respond to voice commands, especially near the barn. He wasn't regressing. He was being conditioned. Lena stood, set the collar gently on the desk like it was a live mine. "I need you to promise something, Mira." The girl looked up. "No one can know we have this. Not yet, not even Theo. But he's the only one who listens," Mira said, her voice barely above breath. "I know, and we may need him soon. But right now, this is dangerous information. People who use collars like this don't like being questioned." Mira bit her lip. "Is Valor going to be okay?" Lena crouched beside her and cupped the girl's cheek. "He will be, because he has you, and now he has me." Outside the window the fog had lifted a little, but the clouds weren't gone, just waiting. That night Lena sat at her late sister's desk and opened the metal lockbox at the bottom drawer. Inside were Elise Rowan's personal files, archived staff complaints, vet records, and one folder marked Valor Custodial Transfer. She opened it with shaking fingers. The adoption order had been signed just 3 days before Elise's death. Valor wasn't a gift. He was a guardian, designated by name. The documents were clear: to remain at Ashridge until Mira Rowan reaches legal age or until medically reassigned. Not to be retrained, not to be separated. At the bottom was Elise's handwriting. He knows what safety looks like. Let him show her. Lena sat back, blinking against the sudden sting in her eyes. Something was deeply, grotesquely wrong. She looked again at the collar on the desk, and it never meant to be. Not again. The back office of the Ashridge kennel wasn't glamorous. Just old plywood walls, a sputtering heater, and shelves stacked with unmarked tapes and dog food invoices, dating back years. But it was quiet, and that made it dangerous. Theo sat hunched over the flickering screen of the security monitor, one headphone in, one out, half listening for footsteps, half dreading the click of the door. His fingers were ink-stained and trembling, resting over a cheap composition notebook he now called the Journal, though he hadn't dared write the word on the cover. Tonight, the date read October 17th, Entry 4, Training Bay C, Session 3. The grainy footage showed Rex Dunn, wearing the same black windbreaker every time, kneeling beside Valor. Theo had watched the clip twice already, but this time he slowed it down, frame by frame. Rex raised his right hand, no voice command. Valor tensed. Then, barely visible in real time, Rex pressed a small device in his left palm. Valor yelped, not loud, not theatrical, just enough to make Theo's breath hitch. Rex didn't blink. He reset the device and tried again. Another press, another flinch. This time, Valor growled, confused, not defiant. Theo paused the video. The frame stuttered, freezing Rex mid-motion. He leaned back in the creaky chair, throat dry. He'd seen enough to file a formal report, enough to blow the roof off Ashridge and possibly take Graham Caldwell down with it, but he hadn't, not yet. Instead, he grabbed a pen and began scribbling. Repeated use of remote stimulation, no verbal commands. Valor shows distress, no aggressive behavior. Subject is being conditioned, not trained. He hesitated, then underlined conditioned 3 times. On a hunch, Theo opened another file, audio logs, mostly forgotten, still synced to the old Bluetooth collar system Elise used for remote feedback long before her death. Half the files were corrupted, one wasn't. The file was time-stamped just 6 nights ago. He played it. Click-buzz shuffling. Graham's voice, low and clipped. If she's not in the picture, neither is the liability. A pause. No 7-year-old in a wheelchair is going to stand in the way of a $12 million acquisition. Another voice, Rex's, dry and blunt. You want the dog to blow up on her. You know that's how it'll look. I want optics, a clean excuse to say she's not safe here anymore, that's all. Theo sat frozen. His hand, without thinking, reached toward Valor's name tag sitting beside the monitor, retrieved from a grooming drawer last week, where someone had replaced it with a blank one. Erasing a name, he realized, was often the first step to erasing a life. Outside the office window, the moon hung heavy over the kennels. It glowed soft silver over the grass, the trees, the quiet path leading back toward Mira's quarters. Theo didn't danger. Justify removal. It was happening in front of him, and he was complicit. He flipped open the notebook again, this time pressing harder. Graham confirmed, intent to discredit Mira's presence, plan to provoke aggression from Valor, and present it as spontaneous. Purpose, sever bond, eliminate liability, secure investor buy-in. The words looked sterile, cold, so he added another line, something he hadn't allowed himself to write before. If I stay silent, I am no different. His breath caught. It would be so easy to say nothing, to keep sweeping, feeding, hosing cages, to stay in his lane. But he thought of the way Valor's ears would twitch when Mira laughed, of the way she'd whisper, he listens better than people do. And of her eyes, bright, serious, when she handed him a drawing last week, a sketch of Theo holding a leash, Valor, standing between him and a faceless man in shadow. She had labeled the shadow, "Not Safe," in big block letters. She saw it all before he did. He copied the audio file to a private drive. Then he opened a second folder. Inside were 5 more clips, training sessions, feeding logs, kennel rotations, nothing overt, but now all seen through a different lens. He started tagging them. Session A1, flinch response. Session B2, avoidance pattern. Session C3, unauthorized command. The journal grew. He added a separate page just for Mira. Increased anxiety. Asking if Valor is okay. Has seen devices. May know more than she says. He underlined, may know more. That thought lingered. Theo knew children weren't oblivious, especially not Mira, especially not after watching her father pretend she was part of the decor. He looked at the time, 3:17 a.m. Then he pressed his palm over the notebook, as if the words might escape. Down the hall, one of the dogs stirred, a soft whine, scratching. Theo listened. Valor. Theo stood, turned off the monitor, and pocketed the drive. The heater in the office groaned into silence, the cold creeping back in. As he stepped outside, the night smelled of pine bark and secrets, some buried, some waiting. He headed toward the kennels, toward the one dog who had never lied, and the girl who still believed in loyalty like it was something alive. He didn't know what would happen next, but tonight he had chosen a side. The attic smelled like cedar and dust and silence. Lena Rowan hadn't stepped into this space in almost 5 years, not since the night Elise's body came home in a flag-draped box, and Mira's voice fell into something quieter than grief. She had kept the creaking steps. Light spilled from her phone's screen, casting narrow shadows along boxes marked winter coats and Christmas don't open till December. At the far end of the attic, behind an old wooden crib no one had the heart to donate, sat a small steel safe. Dust lay thick across its surface, like a layer of sleep. The combination was still scratched onto the back of a picture frame in her bedroom. Lena never forgot it, just buried it under everything else. She knelt slowly, fingers trembling as she turned the dial. The door swung open with a metallic sigh. Inside, neatly stacked in folders yellowed at the edges, were Elise's military documents, deployment papers, commendation letters, a photo of her in uniform with Valor at her side. Younger, steadier. Tucked beneath them was a sealed envelope, brittle but unbroken. The front read, "To Lena, if anything happens, and to Mira when she is strong enough." Lena sat cross-legged on the floor, the attic groaning with every gust of October wind. She didn't hesitate. Inside was a single sheet of paper, folded twice. The handwriting was unmistakable, strong, decisive. The kind of script that came from years of mission logs and writing letters under desert stars. "Lena, if you are reading this, then I didn't make it home, and I know you hate that I even planned for this, but you always knew I would. Graham promised to raise Mira as his own. I believed him. Maybe I was naive. Maybe I was desperate to believe that blood wasn't the only thing that could protect her. But I trust Valor more than I trust the system. Or even Graham. That dog has seen what I've seen, felt what I've felt. He knows how to guard what matters. That's why I'm naming him Mira's legal guardian until she's of age. I don't mean that in metaphor. It's filed with the will. You've always been the quiet center in my chaos. If Graham ever forgets who he promised to be, you'll know.
Tell Mira I didn't go down without thinking of her." Lena wiped at her face with the sleeve of her sweater, though she hadn't realized she was crying. She set the letter aside and thumbed through the rest of the safe's contents. There, filed behind the standard DD-214, was a notarized document, dated 2 months before Elise's last mission, signed by Elise, stamped by an Ashridge notary. Designation of temporary guardian, subject military service dog, unit name Valor. Guardian role, protection of minor Mira Rowan, age 2, until age of majority or transfer of custody. Lena exhaled slowly, staring at the words as if they might vanish. It was legal, it was binding, and it had never been honored. She descended the attic stairs with the folder pressed to her chest like it held something still beating. Materials. Him standing tall beside Myra's wheelchair, his hand never quite touching her shoulder, his smile fixed, her eyes uncertain. And now it all made sense. Graham had never planned to be a father. He'd planned to be a figurehead. Myra was part of the arrangement, a temporary promise, a liability. Lena entered her study, turning on the small desk lamp. The folder lay open under the warm light. Beside it, she placed a photo, Elise in full fatigues, kneeling beside a younger Valor, who gazed at her with the kind of loyalty words could never name. She whispered into the stillness, "You knew this would happen, didn't you?" The house did not answer, but outside, through the frost-glazed windowpane, she saw a shape rise and stretch. Valor. Not prowling, not patrolling, just there, beneath Myra's window, as always. She opened her laptop. A search. A scan of the estate documents, a rereading of Elise's will. There it was. All guardianship of minor child to Graham Caldwell, contingent upon adherence to behavioral safety standards and co-trustee oversight. There had been no oversight. There had only been optics. And Lena, in her silence, had become part of it. She leaned back, the weight of it pressing into her chest. It wasn't just about saving Myra now. It was about correcting a betrayal, one that began the moment Elise was laid to rest and a promise was twisted into branding. That night, Lena stood quietly outside Myra's room. Through the cracked door, she saw the soft outline of the child's face turned toward the window, one small hand resting on Valor's thick neck. He was awake, ears alert but still, guarding, waiting. Lena whispered, more to herself than to the dark, "Your mother chose well." For the first time in years, she felt Elise's presence, not in memory, but in purpose, in motion. And something inside her clicked back into place. This fight wasn't over. It had just begun. The wind had teeth that morning, out past the Ashridge estate beyond the main paddocks and polished kennels and the crisp scent of clovered fields, stood a barn that hadn't seen a horse in over a decade. Tin roof rusting, paint peeled down to its bones. No sign, no path, just tire marks in the frost-bitten grass. Valor's crate clanged against the metal floor of the truck bed as they backed him in. No ceremony, no explanation, just orders. Rex Dunn stood by the barn doors, a cigarette smoldering between cracked fingers, eyes squinting through the fog as the crate was lowered. He didn't speak. Mounted camera in the corner. As Rex released the latch, Valor didn't lunge or growl. He just stood, ears twitching, gaze calm. There was a dignity in the stillness that irritated Rex more than any resistance. "You remember the game, soldier?" Rex muttered, tossing a worn rope toy into the center of the stall. Stimulus, reaction. Let's see what's left in you. He closed the door, turned the bolt, and walked to a steel cabinet in the back. From inside, he retrieved the tools of his trade. A shock collar, matte black, modified with a side panel for frequency modulation. A trigger remote, worn smooth from use, and a visor designed to reflect light at just the angle that disoriented most K9 units in high-stress simulations. He was never paid to be kind, just effective. The collar clicked into place around Valor's neck. He didn't resist, but his shoulders tensed beneath the pressure, like a man being fitted with old shackles. Rex stepped back and pressed the button. A low whine rose from the collar. Not pain, not yet. Just warning. Valor's eyes closed for a second, as if steadying something deeper than reflex. Then the first shock came. Brief, sharp, surgical. Valor jerked but didn't growl. His body absorbed it like muscle memory, but his posture didn't change. Rex narrowed his eyes. You're going to be a tough one. He stepped forward and raised a cardboard cutout, a man in a padded bite suit, arms raised. The visual cue. Shock, cue. Shock, cue. But Valor did not bite, did not leap. His gaze kept drifting to the side of the kennel wall. There, pinned with a single nail, was a photo. A small, folded Polaroid, slightly curled, smudged from being handled. It showed a little girl in a wheelchair, drawing a dog with uneven strokes. In the bottom corner, a single word in crayon, Mira. Rex hadn't noticed it yet, but Valor had. Every time the cue appeared, his eyes flicked to the photo. His ears dipped. His muscles held. The instinct to protect had become rooted, overriding whatever programming Rex tried to restore. By the end of the first session, Rex was sweating, not from effort, but frustration. He leaned against the stall wall, watching the dog from behind the one-way mirror. Valor stood still, eyes on the photo, breath shallow, silent. You were a damn weapon, Rex muttered. What did she do to you? He looked down at the remote, thumbed it once more. The collar hissed and sparked. Valor let out a sound, deep, choked, but still he didn't break. Night fell early in the barn, no music, no lights, just the wind carving patterns in the dust. High hand reached for the floor beside her bed. It was empty. Valor? She whispered into the dark. No answer. Not even silence that felt familiar. Just absence. In the barn, Rex watched the footage again. Rewound, fast-forwarded, looked for signs. Nothing. No aggression, only resistance, only loyalty to something that made no tactical sense. And that's when he saw the photo. He paused the video, leaned in. He recognized the girl from the estate brochure, the wheelchair kid, Graham's stepdaughter or niece or whatever. He smirked. So that's your anchor. Then he stood. Tomorrow he'd take it down. But tonight, he wanted to see what the dog would do with hope still in sight. The rain came early that morning. Thin at first, like whispering fingers tapping gently on the greenhouse roof. Then heavier, drumming across the garden in unpredictable pulses. Ashridge's grounds took on a dull silver hue, the hedges weeping dew, the sky bruised with a gray that refused to lift. Inside the sunroom, Mira sat cross-legged in her wheelchair, the tray across her lap cluttered with dull crayons and torn sketch paper. But she wasn't drawing, not yet. Her eyes stayed on the raindrops skimming down the glass. Lena walked in quietly, her arms full of folded linens. She paused at the doorway. Something about the way Mira sat, not slumped in exhaustion but still almost frozen, gave her pause. "Sweetheart?" Lena asked gently, placing the linens on the window bench. "Didn't sleep again?" Mira didn't answer immediately.
Then, still watching the rain, she whispered, "Valor didn't dream with me last night." Lena slowly came closer, kneeling beside the wheelchair. "Dream with you." Mira turned, and for the first time in days, her voice held a tremble. "He always does, ever since I was little. We go places when I sleep. Sometimes the orchard, sometimes the creek near Mom's cabin. But last night, it was just dark. Like when you're waiting for someone, but they don't show up." She paused, then added more quietly, "That's 2 nights in a row." Lena felt something twist in her chest. She reached over and brushed a stray lock of hair behind Mira's ear. The girl leaned into it for a second, but her expression stayed distant. "I'm sure he's just being trained in a different part of the grounds," Lena offered, voice even. "Maybe they took him on a trip." But even as she said it, something in her gut rejected the words. Mira shook her head. "No, he didn't say goodbye." Then slowly, she picked up a crayon. Not sky blue, not grass green, but charcoal gray, and she began to draw. Lena didn't interrupt. She sat beside her in silence, watching the crayon move, slow, firm lines carving into the white. The picture took shape like memory rising to the surface. A dog in a small cage, its eyes wide but dulled. Thick shadows spilled from the bars, pooling beneath. With care, but scratched, like she was trying to dig through the paper. And to the side, faceless figures stood, holding strange boxes, their arms too long, their eyes absent. Lena's hand instinctively reached for her phone, but she stopped. Something deeper was happening here, something unspoken. "Mira," she asked softly, "are you drawing a dream? Or something else?" Mira stopped coloring. Her fingers tightened on the crayon. "I don't know," she whispered. "Sometimes it feels like he's showing me, like from far away. But I don't see clearly, just flashes." She looked down at the cage she had drawn. "He's scared, but not of being hurt. He's scared I won't know he's still trying." Lena swallowed hard. The last few days had been strange. Graham more distant than usual, Theo evasive, and Mira more withdrawn. And now, these drawings, these whispers of something unseen, patterns too clear to be coincidence. She looked again at the sketch. The cage door had no lock, just a chain, and the chain looped into a remote device that looked too familiar. Lena had seen it once before. In a military brief Elise had shown her, years ago. Conditioning collars, electrostimulus training, psychological imprinting. "Sweetheart," Lena said gently, "do you know what this is?" She pointed to the device in the picture. Mira nodded. "He doesn't like it. When it buzzes, it makes his ears cry." Lena's fingers curled slightly. "Buzzes?" Mira looked back at the paper. "I think someone's trying to make him forget me." The rain thickened. Outside, tree limbs bowed under its weight. Lena stood up, her mind suddenly sharp, like an old switch flipped back into place. She hadn't worn her military years on her sleeve, not since Elise passed. But the instincts remained: observation, correlation, action. Mira's expression had changed, less anxious, more searching. "Do you trust me, Aunt Lena?" she asked. Lena knelt again, meeting her eyes. "With everything." "Then, can we find him?" Lena hesitated. "You mean Valor?" Mira nodded. "Even if Daddy says he's just on a mission, I think they're lying." Lena placed a hand over Mira's small,
crayon-dusted fingers. I think you might be right. Later that evening, Lena stood alone in her room, staring at an old photograph tucked inside a ceramic box Elise once gave her. Elise, in fatigue, wrote clearly, "Stay." Midnight at Ashridge carried a silence so thick it felt alive, broken only by the erratic clang of the weather vanes spinning on the derelict barn roof beyond the north meadow. Theo Harron moved across the field in a crouch, breath ghosting in pale wisps. His phone, set to airplane mode, rode in his jacket pocket. A cheap clip-on mic dangled beneath the zipper, the red LED hidden beneath a strip of duct tape. Ahead, the isolation barn loomed, tin siding washed silver by moonlight. One high window glowing with an anemic bulb that never shut off. A padlock hung on the main doors, but Theo didn't pause. He'd freed the hinge bolt earlier during muck-out, pretending to look for a shovel. Now, he slid the staple aside and slipped through the narrow gap. Inside, the air stank of disinfectant and fear sweat. A single work light bleached the center aisle, throwing long shadows across stacked hay bales. Beyond them, in a converted stall, Rex Dunn stood in his black windbreaker, remote clutched like a detonator. In the pen, Valor faced a child-size mannequin strapped to a small wheelchair, its plastic face blank, its hands molded to hold a stuffed dog. Someone had scrawled a smile across the doll's cheek with red marker. Theo's stomach lurched. Rex pressed the button. A short metallic whine filled the stall, then a jolt cut through Valor's body. The shepherd staggered, claws scrabbling on the rubber mat, a bark ripped out of him half-formed, pain, not menace. Still, he refused to lunge. He dropped to a crouch instead, head low, eyes fixed on the doll but soft, bewildered. His gaze flicked left, toward the place on the wall where Mira's Polaroid had hung the day before. It was gone now, a fresh nail hole, the only proof it had ever existed. Rex sighed. Stubborn bastard. Theo eased his phone from his pocket, thumb hovering over record. Click. The screen glowed for a heartbeat before he shielded it with his palm. Audio rolled. Grainy video followed through a cracked board. Rex changed tactics. He lifted a padded bite sleeve, waving it in front of the doll. "Target," he commanded. Then another shock, longer, crueler. Valor yelped, the sound knifing through the rafters. He leapt, but not at the mannequin. Instead, he bolted sideways, crashing shoulder first into the mesh gate, as if trying to break through solid steel. The impact rattled the stall. Dust rained from the loft. "Focus," Rex barked, voice fraying. He jabbed the remote again. A third shock. Valor's hind leg buckled. He collapsed, chest heaving, mouth foaming slightly at the edges. Yet even on the ground, he crawled toward the far corner, whip in frustration. "One more," he muttered, almost pleading now, like a gambler doubling down on a losing hand. "Give me the damn bite." The whip cracked again. Valor answered with a growl, hoarse, grief-laced, not threatening. A plea. Theo swallowed the bile, rising in his throat, pushed through the gap in the doors, and let the darkness swallow him. He hurried along the barn wall, boots whispering over damp grass, until he reached the rear service door, the one that opened into the holding corridor. Metal hinges squealed softly as he slipped inside. Moonlight pooled through warped boards, just enough for shapes to exist, but not enough to name them. He exhaled, finally, back pressed to the cool plank. A soft scrape behind him. He turned. Valor stood at the corridor's far end, the stall latch hanging askew, gate nudged open by sheer brute desperation. He limped, right forepaw held gingerly, each step a shudder, yet he moved with purpose, nose low, tracing Theo's scent like a lifeline. "Easy, boy," Theo whispered, dropping into a crouch. He feared the dog might bolt at any sudden gesture, but Valor staggered forward until his head rested against Theo's chest. Up close, the burnt plastic smell of singed fur clung to him. Theo's hand found the collar, still warm. He fumbled for the clasp, but Valor nudged his wrist, as if asking later. The shepherd's eyes were dark pools of pain and recognition. Theo's own vision blurred. "I'll get you out," he whispered, voice thick. "On my life, Valor, I'll get you out." Valor's tail thumped once against the wall, weak but resolute. In the distance, Rex cursed, metal rattled, a hunt beginning. Theo rose, guiding Valor deeper into the corridor. Every few feet, the dog faltered, but he kept moving, ears trained on Theo's heartbeat, as if syncing to its steadier rhythm. They reached a side door that opened to the understory of pine beyond the barn. Theo glanced back. Overhead light splashed across the empty stall, Rex's silhouette prowling like a furious shadow. He nudged the door. Hinges groaned. Wind hissed through. "Shh," Theo murmured, steadying Valor with one hand while easing the latch with the other. Almost there, the night opened, swallowing them into the tree line where moonlight couldn't follow. Pine needles cushioned their steps. The scent of wet earth masked the smell of fear. Theo knelt once more, pressed his phone to Valor's collar, snapping quick photos. Proof of burns, proof of model numbers, evidence. Valor leaned into him, breath hot against Theo's ear. A low rumble vibrating through his ribs, not a growl. Break. The storm that had threatened all evening finally broke just after 10, drumming against the lead-paned windows of Ashridge like a fist demanding entry. Lightning split the night, drawing skeletal branches across the mahogany walls of Graham Caldwell's private study. It was the one room on the estate that still carried a smell of old cigars and newer ambition. Heavy, airless. Graham stood at the drinks cart, wrist angled as he poured 2 fingers of scotch into crystal. The glass rang softly when he set it down. Behind him, the door swung shut with a muted click, sealing the room and its secrets in thick silence. Lena Rowan didn't bother to sit. She crossed the Persian rug with measured steps and laid the shock collar on the desk between them. The metal electrodes caught a flash of lightning, sparking briefly like exposed fangs. Graham didn't need to look. He recognized the device the way a hunter recognizes his own trap. He lifted the tumbler, inhaled the smoky aroma, and let the moment stretch so thin it might tear. "You left this in the barn," Lena said, voice calm, almost gentle. "Thought you might want it back." Graham sipped. "It's training equipment. We have dozens." This one was burning Valor's neck. His eyes flicked to her at last, cool, appraising. "I'm sorry you saw something unpleasant, but you were never comfortable with the harder side of the work. Elise handled that for us." Lena felt the name land like a slap. Don't use her to justify torture. "Torture?" Graham laughed, soft and incredulous. "You're being dramatic." "Am I?" Lena opened a folder, Elise's guardianship papers, and slid them beside the collar. "Because Elise signed a legally binding directive.
No reconditioning, no separation from Mira. You violated both. Graham's smile thinned. Directives shift with circumstance. Veilers become unpredictable. I'm protecting the business. Lightning boomed. The glass rattled in Lena's hand, but she held it steady. You're protecting yourself. From what? Investors who might see a dog love a child more than its owner? It's not love, Lena. It's imprinting. And imprinting can be reshaped by electroshocks, if necessary. He set the tumbler down with a decisive clink. Look at the bigger picture. Turner money means expansion.
Vulnerable child, Lena repeated, stepping closer. Whom you promised to love as your own. Graham's eyes hardened. Blood was never tested. I took Elise's word, foolish in retrospect. Lightning flashed again, whiter this time, revealing the ghost of exhaustion under his polished veneer. You want honesty? He asked, voice dropping. Fine. Mira isn't mine. Genetic testing confirmed it. Elise was already pregnant when she begged me to play father. I, in my gullible devotion, agreed. But a man has limits. One accident, and suddenly my whole legacy is tied to a child that isn't even blood. A deviation from the brand. Stop, Lena breathed, color draining from her face. But Graham pressed on, words sharpening. I've built Ashridge into an empire of precision, and precision cannot afford deviations. Investors pay for certainty, not pity. If Mira is sidelined, if valor is redeployed, Turner signs. It's math. Lena stared at him, disbelief crashing into rage. You would rewrite a child's life, Elise's child, because she threatens your spreadsheets. Graham lifted the collar between two fingers. I'm rewriting nothing. I'm ensuring continuity. For a heartbeat, the only sound was rain, punishing the windows. Lena's pulse thundered in her ears. She thought of Mira's drawings, storms and cages, of Valor's burns, Theo's whispered recording, of Elise's scrawled words. He's not just a dog. He's a promise. She inhaled, steady, felt the chill of resolve settle over grief. Listen carefully, she said, voice low, but carrying. You've miscalculated. Mira isn't a deviation. She's the heart of this place. And Valor's loyalty is worth more than every contract you'll ever chase. Graham snorted, turning toward the decanter. Save the sentiment. Not on my watch, Lena cut in, steel slicing through the room. I let you steer this ship because Elise trusted you. But the moment you shocked that dog and called her daughter a liability, you lost any claim to legacy. He froze. Lena gathered the folder and the collar. Do what you must for your investors, Graham, because I will do what I must for Mira. Starting now. She turned, storm light blazing in her eyes, and left him alone with his scotch and the echo of a promise, heartbeats echo. He was moving slower today. Mira noticed. His steps were uneven, his breathing less silent. Still, he followed her faithfully. Even when she wheeled a little faster,
to catch the last bloom of sunlight before it tucked behind the greenhouse. Then, without sound, without warning, he stumbled. Mira turned just in time to see Valor's legs buckle beneath him. His body dropped hard onto the gravel, kicking up dust. A low, strangled sound, part breath, part whimper, escaped his throat before it was swallowed by silence. "Valor?" Mira's voice cracked. She shoved her wheels forward, hands scraping on rubber rims. "Valor!" He was twitching, his back legs rigid, his head jerking to the side, as if some unseen current rippled through him. His breath came in short, ragged bursts. His eyes met hers, and even through the pain, there was apology in them. The same kind of look he'd given her when she fell during her first attempt at wheeling up the ramp alone. She screamed. Lena came running, apron still dusted with flour. One look at the scene. The fallen dog, Mira sobbing, was all she needed. She dropped to her knees. "Oh my God!" She pressed her fingers against Valor's neck and flinched. The fur was damp, burnt, sticky. "Stay with him," she said to Mira, already reaching for her phone. "Don't move. I'm calling Theo." Theo arrived in minutes, breathless and pale, a flashlight still clipped to his belt from the early evening checks. The moment his eyes locked onto Valor, he didn't ask questions. He knelt beside the dog, fingers moving with instinct and fear. "Something's wrong with his neck," Lena said, voice low but urgent. Theo parted the fur, and there it was, under the matted black and tan. The collar, thin, metallic, tucked so deep into the ruff, it was almost fused to skin. "Jesus," he whispered. "It's still active." Mira stared. "What do you mean?" Theo didn't answer. His hands moved fast now. He found the clasp, fought it. When it didn't give, he reached into his pocket and pulled out a utility knife, slicing through the band in one clean motion. The moment the collar hit the ground, Valor let out a long, shuddering breath, as if exhaling weeks of pain. His body slackened, his head dropped onto Mira's lap, and Mira, her lip trembling, touched the raw skin beneath his fur. Blisters had formed. The edges were cracked, oozing. Her voice came out in a whisper. "He was hurting." Theo's jaw tightened. "They used it on him more than once." Mira bent over him, small hands shaking. She pressed her forehead to his ear. "I didn't know, Valor. I didn't know they were hurting you." He didn't move, but one eye opened slightly, just enough to see her, just enough. Low, fierce with a child's impossible sense of duty. Lena laid out supplies beside them, and together, slowly, carefully, Myra began to clean Valor's wounds. Each touch was deliberate, reverent. "I'll fix you," she whispered, tears dripping onto the cotton. "I promise." The old dog didn't flinch. He let her work, his body still, his breath shallow. As she wrapped the gauze around his neck, her fingers trembling, Valor lifted a single paw and rested it gently across her lap. A small gesture, a thank you. A vow returned. Night came quickly after that. Theo sat on the porch steps in silence, clutching the broken collar in his fist. Inside, Lena burned the rest of the training logs, and Myra, her drawings of cages and faceless figures tucked under her pillow, slept beside Valor on the rug, her tiny hand curled in his fur. The rain had not yet come, but somewhere beyond the trees, thunder stirred. The gravel crunched softly beneath Myra's wheelchair wheels as she moved slowly along the garden path. The morning sun filtered through the cypress trees, warm but not harsh, casting a dappled gold across the lavender rows. Valor walked beside her, always just close enough that his shoulder brushed the rim of her wheel now and then, as if reminding her gently that he was there. "He's been tired lately," she had whispered to Lena that morning, "but he still wants to come with me." every time. Lena had kissed the top of her head and said, "That's because he loves you." But now, as they moved toward the gate at the far end of the property, Myra sensed it before she saw it. Valor's gait faltered. She stopped, turned. His legs shook beneath him, his chest rising and falling too fast. Then, like someone cutting the strings of a marionette, he crumpled. "Valor!" Her scream tore through the quiet air. She wheeled backward clumsily, nearly tipping the chair in her panic. Valor lay on his side, struggling to breathe, his paws twitching, as if still trying to walk. His mouth was open, but no sound came. "Help! Someone help!" Lena burst out from the side entrance of the house. The look on her face was the kind only a mother or someone who had once been one could wear. Part fear, part fire. "Myra, what happened?" He just fell. He couldn't breathe. He's shaking." Myra's voice dissolved into sobs. Lena dropped to her knees beside Valor. Her hand slid beneath his neck and recoiled. "God," she muttered. The fur was wet. Not from dew or sweat, but something hotter.
"Myra, I'm calling Theo, now." Theo arrived 10 minutes later, breathless, sweat beating on his temple despite the breeze. One look at Valor on the ground, Myra's hands shaking, Lena's pale face, and he understood more than anyone was saying aloud. "It's the collar," Lena said, "not the standard one. There's a second one, hidden." Theo knelt. "Help me roll him." Together, they turned Valor gently. Theo pulled out a small toolkit from his back pocket, the kind handlers always carried, and worked the lock mechanism on the embedded collar. "This isn't police issue," he muttered. With a final twist, the clasp snapped open. The moment the collar was removed, Valor exhaled, loud, guttural, as though his lungs had been held captive. His body slumped fully now, unconscious but not seizing. Myra slid down from her wheelchair, collapsing onto the ground beside him. She didn't ask what the collar was. She didn't ask how long it had been there. She just touched the burn marks, her small fingers tracing the patterns in silence. Inside the barn-turned shed, Lena gathered supplies: gauze, salve, clean towels. The air was thick with the scent of iodine and something else. Regret, maybe. "I'll do it," Myra said softly when Lena returned. "Honey." "I need to," she insisted. "He would do it for me." So Lena helped lower Valor's head into Myra's lap. He stirred, just barely. A twitch of his tail, a flicker in his good eye. "I'm here, Valor," she whispered. "It's okay now." She began cleaning the wound, dipping the cloth into warm water, gently pressing around the burns. He flinched once, and her hands froze. But he didn't move away. "You were hurting, and I didn't know." Her voice cracked. Lena stepped back. She didn't cry, though her throat burned. She had once cleaned wounds just like this on Elise, when they trained together. But dogs didn't sign up for this. Dogs didn't wear targets on their backs because of ambition. Myra wrapped the bandage slowly, her knuckles white from gripping too tightly. When she was done, she laid her forehead against Valor's and whispered, "I'll fix you, Valor. I promise." Theo stood outside, holding the broken collar in his hand, thumb running over the jagged edge of the wire. He didn't need more evidence. But now it was personal. That night, Valor lay curled at the foot of Myra's bed. The bandages wrapped around his neck glowed faintly in the moonlight. He didn't dream. And Myra, her hand resting gently on his side, didn't either. But somewhere, in the empty barn beyond the field, the silence buzzed like a wire still searching for a signal.
The kitchen clock read 1:17 a.m. when Theo clicked the upload button, but his fingers moved with certainty. The same certainty that had guided them when he'd sliced Valor's torture collar free. A burner Gmail, freshly minted. A subject line: unethical canine training at prestigious facility, urgent. A single line of text: footage speaks for itself, protect the animals, protect the kid. And attached, a 47-second clip ripped from his phone's cache. Rex triggering the shock. Valor yelping, collapsing, refusing the child-sized mannequin. Recipient: Jillian Park, the night desk producer for Channel 5 News. One of the few local reporters who hadn't accepted Ashridge's glossy press passes at face value. Send. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the email vanished into cyberspace, and Theo's pulse spiked, as if a vein of ice had split open in his chest. No going back. He closed the lid, stuffed the laptop into his backpack, and killed the lights. The Ashridge Daily Brief arrived in Graham Caldwell's inbox precisely on schedule. Kennel stats, social metrics, investor reminders, but at the bottom was a link from the Institute's social media monitoring bot flagged, negative brand sentiment rising, local market. Graham clicked. A Twitter thread with fewer than 400 likes, but spiking fast. At Jillian Park News. Disturbing footage allegedly from Ashridge Canine Institute shows a military dog subjected to electric shock reconditioning. Claims dog assigned to disabled child. Full story at 11. The clip autoplayed beneath her caption. Valor's scream filled Graham's office before he could fumble for mute. He tasted bile. Immediately he dialed Rex. "What the hell did you send me?" Rex growled, answering mid-ring, breath ragged. Clearly he'd just watched it too. "You tell me," Graham snapped. "Who was in that barn?" "I locked it. Only staff with keys were you, Dunn, Morales." "Theo." Graham's mind flashed to the quiet intern's dark eyes, always observing. "Damage control," he ordered. "Shut it down in comment sections. Discredit the footage. Bring the dog back under." Rex hesitated. "He's not in shape to move yet." "Do it." Graham ended the call. Ashridge's driveway filled with vehicles, trainers hustling to morning drills, but Lena noticed the Channel 5 news van pausing at the outer gate, reporters filming through the bars. Not enough for a live shot, yet enough for B-roll. Inside, Mira sat at the kitchen island feeding Valor small pieces of boiled chicken. Doctor's orders. Every time thunder boomed, Valor flinched, and Mira covered the bandage on his neck with her palm, as though shielding him from memories. Lena's phone buzzed. "Theo." News got the first clip, small but spreading. Graham's rattled. "We'll need more proof for the world." Amid towers of bankers' boxes filled with training logs and contract drafts. He'd hauled them here at dawn, hours before staff shift. Shadows pooled under his eyes, but adrenaline sharpened his focus. Lena closed the door behind her. "The collar video is out?" He nodded, showed her the thread. Low-level traction, but comments are snowballing. Students, ex-handlers, a few animal rights accounts, enough to scare Graham. She flicked through box labels, finance, medical, legal. Not enough to destroy him. "Yet," Theo answered. He produced a fresh USB. "This has a month of internal security feeds, barn sessions, shock data from the collar's transmitter, audio of Graham's deviation from the brand line. I've masked network IDs. If we drip feed it to Jillian, each piece will verify the last." Lena studied him, this quiet kid with mud-flecked boots and calloused hands, suddenly steering a whistle blow that could flatten a dynasty. "You realize," she said softly, "this ends your career here. Maybe anywhere in the field." Theo's jaw clenched. "My father used to say a vet's first oath is do no harm. Standing by is harm." Lena opened another box, board meeting minutes, and found what she'd hoped, signatures authorizing behavioral recalibration trials, buried in fine print. She held the page up to the dusty light. "And parents' first oath is protect." Their eyes met. Understanding welded in silence. Online chatter spiked. A local animal rights nonprofit retweeted the video. A regional newspaper quoted the thread.
A hashtag Stop Ashridge shock tag flickered into existence, small but alive. Graham's assistant Emily burst into his office.
"Mr. Graves' team forwarded the footage. He wants clarification before tomorrow's site tour. They're considering postponing." Graham's temples throbbed. "Tell them it's doctored."
Her eyes darted. They asked for raw security tapes.
He ground out a curse, waved her away, and stared at the monitor. Valor's scream still rang in his skull. Theo and Lena huddled over a laptop as Jillian Park replied to the burner account. "Need verification. Interview. Protecting sources a priority." Theo typed quickly. "More coming. Timeline dossier by end of day. Source safety critical. Send." He looked at Lena. "We have maybe 12 hours before Graham tries to erase every drive on property." She nodded. "Then we collect everything that can't be erased. Scars, testimonies, the dog himself. He'll try to cut us off," Theo warned. "That's why we move first," Lena said, voice cold as flint. She folded Elise's guardianship papers into her coat pocket. "You gather data. I'll gather allies." Outside, in the courtyard, Valor lifted his head toward the door, as if already sensing the next fault line. Through the wrought iron gate, Mira heard them from the upstairs landing. Soft tires, muted doors, umbrellas opening. Valor, resting at her feet, lifted his head and gave one deep, steady growl. Outside, staff lined up in blue jackets, immaculate and silent. At the center stood Graham Caldwell, silver hair unflinching, eyes calculating. He didn't carry an umbrella. Control was armor. From the lead SUV stepped Lucian Graves, tall and deliberate, followed by his wife Catherine, 2 teenage sons, and last Cameron. 22 but still boyish, he paused, eyes scanning the estate with a quiet intensity. As his brother handed him a folded map, Cameron pocketed it without looking, drawn instead toward the sound of faint laughter near the solarium. Inside, Mira wheeled in slow circles, Valor matching her pace. Lena stood nearby, phone buzzing. When the door opened, both turned. Cameron stood on the threshold, rain threading down his hood. His eyes flicked to the girl in the chair, the dog with bandaged fur, the sketches taped across the glass. "I'm Mira," she said, tentative. He nodded, quiet and precise. "Cameron Graves." Then spotting Valor, "Is that him? You know his name?" she asked. Cameron knelt, extended a flat hand. Valor sniffed, then nudged it gently. "Cedar and antiseptic," he murmured. "You've been caring for him." Mira smiled. "We take care of each other." At the door, Catherine watched. "He sees what others don't," she whispered to Lena. "So does your dog." Back on the lawn, Graham led Lucian past pens and polished turf, reciting numbers like gospel. Obedience rates, program outputs, ROI projections. Lucian's eyes drifted to the solarium dome, where a girl and boy leaned over a sketchbook, and a dog watched the world with ancient calm. "That shepherd's not scheduled for today," Graham said, voice tight, off program. Lucian raised an eyebrow. "The one bonded to your daughter?" "Therapy case, not suitable for demo." At the demonstration arena, Rex Dunn waited in uniform, collar remote clipped to his belt like a sidearm. Graham presented the training layout. Props, bleachers, bite sleeves, a wheelchair mannequin. Lucian gestured to Cameron. "He'll observe up close?" "Observe, yes," Graham replied, "but hands-on must be limited for safety." "Dad," Cameron cut in. He approached with Mira beside him and Valor at heel. "She invited me." Graham's smile faltered. "Sweetheart, this is a professional review." "He's gentle," Mira said, hand on Valor's back. "He wants to watch." Lucian turned to Graham. "Is that a problem?" Rex interjected. "Protocol lists Valor as inactive. We have others." Catherine touched Cameron's arm. "Would it help to see the dog you read about?" Cameron nodded. The others feel noisy. Lucian nodded once. Then include Valor. Graham's eyes darkened. Of course, anything for our guests. He turned to Rex. Suit the shepherd. Rex hesitated, then moved toward Valor, remote already gleaming in his fist. Valor's ears dropped. Mira's grip on his fur tightened. Lena tapped her phone. Recording. If Graham wanted a showcase, they'd document every second. At the gate, Rex clipped a demo leash onto Valor and reached under the collar. Valor growled, a quiet warning. Rex smirked, hiding frustration. Places, everyone, Graham called. Let's show them precision. Lucian spoke low to Catherine. Did you see Caldwell's eyes when she wheeled in? Territory, she replied. Fear disguised as authority. From the back row, Theo raised his camera. Lena nodded. He pressed record. Mira whispered, Remember, you promised I could be brave too. Valor nudged her knee. Clouds gathered, gray and dense. On the field, child, dog, and stranger stood in a ring painted white. The arena buzzed with silent dread. Graham took the mic. Ladies and gentlemen, observe instinct refined into discipline. Rex entered with Valor, the dog's coat gleaming, but his gait stiff. A thin black collar, fresh, wired, hid beneath his fur. Rex held the leash loose. The remote in his other hand gleamed cold. Mira watched from the bleachers, knuckles white. Something's wrong, she whispered. Cameron leaned in. He's guarding his left leg. Tail's not relaxed. It's listening. Listening? Catherine asked. He's reading the field, Cameron said, and that man is lying with every movement. Across the arena, Valor locked eyes with Mira. Between them pulsed one silent question. Are you safe? Graham raised his hand. Rex pressed the remote. Valor twitched. The crowd saw nothing, only his muscles bunching, a flick of his ears. The dog will now demonstrate controlled deterrence, Graham announced. Theo tightened his zoom. Valor's jaw trembled. Beneath his fur, the scar line glowed faint pink. Rex lifted the bite sleeve. Target. Another click. Valor stumbled, caught himself. Then pivoted, placing his body between Rex and Mira. Silence fell. Catherine inhaled sharply. Lucian leaned forward. Reporters froze. Rex pressed again. Valor stood his ground. A low growl began. That's not part of the procedure, Graham barked. Mira's voice rose from the bleachers. Leave him alone. Rex laughed awkwardly. Just calibrating. One more cue. He hit the remote a third time. Valor jerked, but held. He barked once, thunderous, at Rex, a final warning. He's choosing, Cameron said, even through pain. Caldwell, is this normal procedure? Graham hesitated. It's an advanced trust drill. Catherine said, it looks like he's protecting her from you. Cameron stood and approached. Hurting him won't make him obey. Rex stiffened. This isn't part of the protocol. Then the protocol is broken. Theo's lens captured everything. Rex's clenched fist, the smoking edge of the remote, the whispering crowd, Graham's mask slipping. Graham stepped forward. Brief intermission, but it was too late. Valor exhaled, steadying Mira's chair. She stroked his ear. His tail swept the turf. Once. Jillian's voice buzzed in Theo's earpiece. We're live. Keep rolling. Rex tried one final cue. Valor didn't respond. Lucian spoke, voice like steel. Shut it down. Cameron gently pried the remote from Rex's hand. Reporters surged. Cameras clicked like thunder. Theo zoomed out, framing Graham's pale face in a field of consequence. Mira laid her cheek on Valor's head. "You did it," she whispered. "You stayed." Overhead, thunder rolled. Ashridge would never be the same. And somewhere beneath the hush, Valor's single heartbeat drummed a quiet victory. Decisions, not commands, define loyalty. The demonstration had become a revelation, and no signal in the world could force a dog or a daughter to unlearn the truth now laid bare for everyone to see. For a fraction of a second, the arena seemed to hold its breath. Reporters, investors, handlers, even the restless wind caught in the rafters of the grandstand. Rex Dunn's knuckles whitened around the leash. The remote in his other hand glimmered with rain-spattered light. Valor stood braced in front of Mira's wheelchair, the deep warning in his throat rattling the aluminum spokes. Rex pivoted sideways, closing the distance, bite sleeve raised like a crooked question. Valor's growl dropped an octave. His ears flattened, muscles rippled beneath the bandaged neck. Up in the bleachers, Theo felt his lens tremor. Jillian's whisper crackled in his earpiece. "Stay on the dog. This is it." Cameron took a cautious step toward Mira. Catherine reached for him, but he shook his head. "He's telling them to stop," he murmured, voice brittle with certainty. Lucian studied Rex, then Graham, seeing the tension wire taut between them, frayed and sparking. Rex gave a subtle flick of his thumb, an unspoken ready. Graham, misreading the shepherd's implacable stance as brand suicide, strode forward, veneer shattered, desperation naked. "Stimulate," he barked. Rex hesitated, caught between protocol and instinct. "I said do it." Graham lunged, snatching the remote from Rex. Pain throttled into fury. His eyes flashed to Mira. Sorrow there. Apology. Then snapped to the source. Graham. Time shattered. The shepherd launched. 30 meters of open turf vanished beneath him in 2 bounding strides. Cameras stuttered to follow. Graham's face drained of color as 90 pounds of muscle and memory collided with his chest. They hit the wet grass hard. Graham's breath whooshed out in a shocked grunt, the remote skittering from his hand. Valor pinned him, forepaws platted on tailored shoulders, muzzle inches from the man's throat. His lips peeled back, not wild, not rabid, controlled, deliberate. The remote lay within reach. Graham's fingers flailed in mud, searching. Valor snapped, fangs closing on hard plastic. Crack. Sparks fizzed. The device shattered between his jaws. A final arc of blue lit the air, then died. Gasps became a roar. Shouts, camera shutters, the metallic clatter of handlers rushing forward, but halting at Rex's upraised arm. Even he looked transfixed, admiration overtaking panic. "Stand down," Rex whispered, almost reverent. Valor's ears twitched. For a beat he held position, eyes burning into Graham's. "I warned you." Then he stepped back, not a centimeter more than necessary. Graham rolled to his side, coughing, splattered with grass. The imprint of paws darkened his crisp shirt front. He looked up at the semicircle of lenses, at Mira's wide, tear-bright eyes, at Lucian's stony disbelief. Control was gone. And just like that, the sky broke open. Rain sluiced onto the arena, drumming applause across the canvas awnings. Hero dog headlines wrote themselves in falling water. Mira wheeled forward, Valor immediately resuming guard at her flank. She stopped beside Graham, small voice carrying through the downpour. "He was protecting me, like he always does." Graham couldn't answer. He stared at the ruined remote in the mud. Shards of circuit board glittered like confetti around him. Lucian turned to the Channel 5 crew. "I believe we've seen enough demonstration." Cameron placed a gentle hand on Mira's shoulder. "Your dog sees the truth," he whispered. Mira nodded, tears mingling with rain. Theo lowered the camera, heart hammering. Beside him, Jillian wiped water from her lens, eyes shining. "Roll on the wrap-up," she told her audio tech. "Front page by dusk." Rex approached slowly. Valor tracked him, but did not growl. The trainer knelt, rain running off his hood. "Good choice, soldier," he murmured, voice raw. He looked up at Graham, broken, soaked, exposed, and for the first time felt something like pity. Lena appeared at Mira's side, umbrella forgotten. She didn't speak. Her hand slid over her niece's, squeezing once. Elise's letter, Lena believed it might be true. The cameras kept rolling, capturing not a savage animal, but a loyal guardian, performing the simplest, truest act of protection, standing between a child and the man who had forgotten what promises cost. In the echo of that growl still hanging over Ashridge, a dynasty fractured, but a legacy, the one Elise imagined, took root in the sodden earth, watered by rain, witnessed by all, indestructible. The morning after the demonstration, the world awakened to headlines blazing across every screen. Channel 5's news skipped traffic and weather, opening with a still of a rain-drenched German shepherd pinning Graham Caldwell to the ground. Mira's wheelchair behind him, her hand on the dog's back. Hero dog refuses to attack disabled girl, exposes abuse at K9 Institute. The footage rolled, a hidden collar tightening around Valor's neck, Graham's frantic trigger press, and then Mira stepping between them. Valor did not retaliate. In a side box, Mira's drawings of storm clouds and cages flashed beside the red welts on Valor's neck. By 9 a.m., #HeroDogValor trended across the country. Animal rights groups crowded Ashridge's gates. Investors fled. Lucian Graves, a key funder, appeared on a video call. Effective immediately, he said coldly, "All partnerships with Ashridge K9 Institute are suspended. My son will never set foot there again." The screen went black. In the boardroom, Graham sat disheveled. His defense faltered under the weight of silent PR reps and legal teams reviewing the fallout. Lost sponsors, tanking shares, cancelled clients. Chairwoman Wellington's verdict came clear. "You've failed. Motion to remove Graham Caldwell as CEO, effective immediately." The gavel fell. Security escorted him out. Reporters waited, but he said nothing. That same morning, sheriff deputies and animal control served a warrant for aggravated animal cruelty and child endangerment. Officers crossed the once immaculate kennel block, cameras flashing. Rex Dunn, standing in the aisle, raised his hands. "I'll show you the barn. Everything's still there." At the cottage, Lena made chamomile tea. Valor, bruised and bandaged, rested at Mira's feet. The storm had passed, but the air still held a charge. Mira wrapped her blanket tighter. "Is he gone for good?" Lena turned. "Graham won't run Ashridge again. He'll answer to the law." Mira looked at Valor. With police tape. A state senator called for stronger canine welfare laws. Social media filled with side-by-side images. Graham in mud, Mira hugging Valor. The story had written itself. Cameron and his mother visited before leaving town. He handed Mira a laminated photo of her and Valor under stained glass light, now trending online. "Thought you should own the first copy." She showed it to Valor. who sniffed the paper and nosed it, as if recognizing the moment captured. Privately, Catherine spoke to Lena. "We'll still fund the therapy wing, but only if you're in charge." Lena looked out at Mira and Valor in the yard. "We'll call it Emily's Haven, and Valor will cut the ribbon." That night, peace finally returned. Mira kissed Valor's scarred cheek and tucked the photo under her pillow. Down the hall, Lena drafted an email to reporter Jillian Park. "More documentation attached. Story isn't over. It's just bigger than one villain." She turned off the lamp and whispered into the dark to Elise, to herself. "It's our turn to protect." Outside, under the oak tree, Valor lifted his head to the moon. Not in pain, just the steady breathing of a promise kept. Later that week, Lena knocked on Mira's door. The hush in the house felt fragile, yet full of hope. Twilight painted the garden in soft hues. Valor lay nearby, watching Mira like he was still on duty. Lena entered with a worn maple box.
"Your mom asked me to keep this for you until the time was right."
Inside the box, nestled in velvet, lay a silver locket etched with an infinity knot.
"It was your mother's,"
Lena said, placing it in Mira's hand. Inside the locket were two photos, Elise in military fatigues, and a playful German shepherd pup.
"That's Shadow,"
Lena whispered.
"Valor's name before he was reassigned."
At the sound of that name, Valor stirred. Then Mira found a secret compartment behind the locket, a folded slip of paper in Elise's handwriting. "Shadow will know who you are. Trust him always. For Mira." Mira's eyes welled up. "She wrote it for me, before I could even read."
"She knew he'd remember you,"
Lena said.
"He carried a piece of her memory, and that's how he found you."
Valor rested his head on Mira's knee, tail sweeping once. Mira touched his muzzle. "You always knew, didn't you?" The dog closed his eyes in answer. Lena flipped Mira's sketchpad to her latest drawing. A meadow, a girl, a dog. No cages.
"Looks like he's been telling you this story for weeks."
"I just didn't understand the language." Mira laughed, a sound Lena hadn't heard in weeks. She kissed Valor's forehead. "Thank you, Shadow Valor." He nudged her gently, the new name accepted. From the window, Lena watched staff lighting lanterns along the driveway. People who chose to stay. "We have work ahead," she said, "and I think you'll help lead it. Can I train the new dogs?" "That'll be your department," Lena smiled. At her feet, Valor sighed deeply as if, finally, his mission made perfect sense. Mira fastened the locket around her neck. "He'll remember me, won't he?" "Every breath," Lena said. Outside, stars blinked awake. Mira opened the window, letting the night in. Valor padded beside her. Together they watched the darkness, not with fear, but with resolve. Downstairs, Theo sorted evidence for the cruelty case and sketched plans for a new outreach program. He titled it Shadow's Trust. Meanwhile, in the old barn, stripped of shock collars filled with new pine boards, he worked to remove the last rusted hooks. Each squeak of metal felt like history loosening its grip. Lena arrived with an envelope. "Came to the gate this morning. Harrison Canine Center. Job offer." Theo opened it. "Senior handler, full benefits. Boston." "They're good people," Lena said. "No shock collars, lots of therapy placements." Theo nodded. "But I'm staying." Lena blinked. "You're sure?" He looked outside. Mira and Valor moved through a new drill. No commands,
just teamwork. Laughter floated in. That's why, Theo said. I'd rather build something real than take a title somewhere else. Rebuilding won't be easy, Lena warned. Public trust is shattered. Funding uncertain. He smiled. That means we can do it right. Strip the old name, start fresh. Therapy dogs, veterans, kids. No cages, no fear. Something Elise would have signed with both hands. She stared at the open plans, Rowan program, phase 1, and whispered, "We'll need staff, audits, insurance." "I passed my licensing exam," Theo replied. "My classmates already want to join." "We?" she echoed. "If you'll have me." Lena extended a hand. "Only if we lead differently. No secrets, no cruelty, just trust." "Scout's honor," he said, fingers raised. "We live stream trainings, public open houses. Sunlight cures rot." Lena exhaled. Then it settled. Their handshake wasn't businesslike. It was honest, calloused, grounded. Mira wheeled into the barn with Valor beside her. "We need more soil bags," she announced. "Herbs need good dirt." Other. After a moment, Valor's tail swept the straw. "Guess that's my probation period cleared," Theo joked. Outside, clouds parted, spilling sunlight across the paddock. Renovation would start tomorrow. Budgets would be debated, permits wrangled. But for now, in the quiet of a reclaimed barn, something stronger set the rhythm. A girl's laughter, a dog's breath, and a shared vow to make things right. Theo wiped his brow and grabbed another sack. "Where do we build the nursery beds?" "Right here," Lena said, pointing. "Full sun, and beyond that, a training ring. No electric fences, just hedges." Myra nodded. Valor barked again, short and certain, and they began, one board, one breath, one promise at a time. 2 weeks after the scandal, Ashridge no longer smelled of bleach and bravado. The air held the scent of sawdust and fresh-cut pine. Where shock stations once stood, cedar planks waited to become low-stress kennels. Bite posts were gone, bolt holes now filled with soil for herb beds. It felt like someone had pried open the floorboards and let honesty in. At sunrise, Lena Rowan walked the property with a clipboard and coffee. Colored tape fluttered over staked ground labeled Sensory Garden, Therapy Pool, Veterans Room. What others saw as rubble, she saw as a blueprint. Behind her, contractors hauled away the last relics of cruelty. Electric tethers, training visors, narrow cages. On the loading dock, Rex Dunn, now a volunteer carpenter under court supervision, scrubbed graffiti from a transport crate. The words someone had sprayed, "Loyalty isn't learned with pain," remained. He cleaned around them, framing the new creed. By mid-morning, the remaining staff gathered under a willow. Gone were Navy suits and PR smiles. These were people who stayed, despite the fallout. Theo handed out manuals titled The Rowan Program, Phase 1, bearing Elise Rowan's Infinity Knot insignia and the motto, Service Through Bond, Not Fear. Lena addressed the circle. "First, we retrain ourselves. Positive reinforcement certifications. PTSD protocols with Dr. Patel's clinic. No secrets, no locked barns." "What about funding?" someone asked. "Graves Foundation gave us seed money," Lena said, "and Channel 5's story raised $30,000 in 2 days. "The timeline?" Theo asked. 6 weeks to launch, she said. "Our first class includes 4 shepherd mixes, 2 lab litters for diabetic alert training, and Valor mentoring a pup each." Smiles spread. Hammers resumed their rhythm. In her office, now stripped to brick and blueprints, Lena labeled spaces. Mira's art studio, family suite, equine interaction paddock. Each one a tribute to Elise's absence. Theo appeared on his neck, disappeared beneath new fur. Local kids whispered from the steps, "That's him, the hero dog." They didn't approach, only watched. One girl with a leg brace climbed the stairs, extending her fist. Valor touched his nose to her knuckles. The porch seemed to exhale. From the window, Myra sketched the scene. Over the drawing, she wrote, "Healing starts with hello." That afternoon, Rex approached Lena. "The new wing's framed. What do we name it?" She looked at the beams rising where pain once echoed. "Call it Shadow Hall, for the dog Elise trusted most." Dusk brought quiet. Myra and Valor practiced retrieval cues under the willow. She dropped a glove. He returned it like a knight offering a crown. Theo watched, voice low. "He keeps choosing kindness." "Choice," Lena echoed. "That's the foundation." Theo raised a clipboard. "Tomorrow we install the agility tunnel. Volunteers show up at 0700. Lena squeezed his shoulder. "Tomorrow we prove a training ground can be a sanctuary." As Myra and Valor headed home, dusk cast them in soft gold. Girl and dog, one shadow, one vow. Rain drummed on courthouse steps as the county van rolled through Ashridge's gates. The banner on the gable read, "Rowan Program, opening soon." Deputies escorted Rex Jake Dunn down the ramp. His wrists were cuffed. An ankle monitor blinked beneath muddy jeans. But his posture, shoulders square, eyes steady, spoke not of defiance, but acceptance. Lena met them at the porch. Valor stood at her side, silent and alert. Deputy Brewer tipped his hat. "Ms. Rowan, where should we place him?" "Tool shed," she said, "out of the rain." Inside the maintenance hub, deputies uncuffed Jake and nodded at the visible security cameras. Jake rubbed his wrists, gaze sweeping across seed bags and PVC tunnel frames. Different place without the echo. "You asked to speak before testifying," Lena said. He nodded. "Wanted you to hear it from me first." She folded her arms, waiting. He swallowed. "Video evidence will show I followed Caldwell's orders. But I didn't fight them. That's on me. The Army called me Jake, short for Jackal. I did the dirty training no one wanted to admit existed." He looked away. In Kandahar, 2012, a girl walked into a perimeter with trace explosives on her clothes. The dog I trained latched. Protocol. By the time we got him off, his voice broke. Valor twitched, sensing the fracture beneath Lena's calm. I heard her screams every night after. Took to bottle therapy. Caldwell's offer. "I'll clean stalls, stack lumber, whatever it takes," he said. "You hold the keys, cameras stay rolling." Lena looked at Valor. The shepherd stepped forward, sniffed Jake's palm. No growl, just a light touch, a sigh, as if evaluating not a man's past, but his present. "One chance," she said. "You so much as raise your voice to a trainee, deputies return." Jake's shoulders sagged. "Understood. You'll report to Theo. First task, dismantle the last shock pens. No dog contact until the vets clear you." Jake shook her hand. "Thank you." "Don't thank me," Lena said. "Thank the dog who saw who you could be." Jake's eyes welled. "I will." Outside, rain eased. Across the field, Mira planted seedlings beneath a canvas awning. She spotted Jake and lifted a small wave, nothing accusing, just a welcome. Jake's breath hitched. He waved back. Lena nodded toward the kids. "Every board, every nail is for them." "I won't forget," Jake said. He grabbed gloves and walked into the light drizzle, beginning to dismantle the same rusted fencing he once installed. Each squeal of metal was a reckoning and a redemption. Saturday dawned, clear and sweet. Paper lanterns swayed along the drive. A hand-painted banner read, "Rowan Program, Community Open Day." The air smelled of mulch and cinnamon buns.
Sparrows darted through rafters that once echoed with harsh commands. By 10 o'clock, the grounds teemed with life. Families toured the new sensory garden. Veterans chatted beside agility tunnels. Cedar-lined kennels replaced cages. Every 30 minutes, a chime reminded handlers to breathe. Theo's idea. Good training begins with calm. Near the arena, a makeshift platform waited. To Mira, it looked as grand as a stage. She sat at its edge, Valor beside her, note cards in her lap. Her hands trembled. Lena knelt beside her. "You'll do fine. Just speak like you're talking to him." Cameron readied his camera nearby. Through his lens, he saw something rare. Quiet power. A chime rang. Voices hushed. Families gathered. Veterans sat on hay bales. Theo wheeled out a lectern. "We had a keynote planned," he said, "but this story belongs to the one who lived it." Mira wheeled forward. Valor padded beside her. Scars faded, but presence undimmed. She lifted her chin. "Hi," she began. "I'm Mira. Some of you know Valor, the dog who chose to protect instead of obey." He sat beside her, ears perked. "My mom, Elise Rowan, trained dogs to protect people. She believed they see what hearts hide." Mira let her note cards fall to her lap. "She also left me a note. It said, 'Shadow will know who you are. Trust him always.'" Shadow was Valor's first name. Murmurs rippled. She continued, voice gaining strength. "When people tried to make him forget, he remembered my mother's scent in me. He remembered kindness." She gestured. "Dogs will learn to help, fetch medicine, wake veterans from nightmares, comfort kids like me." Her eyes shone. "My mom sent me a guardian, but he became more than that. He became my voice. Now, we help others find theirs." Valor stepped forward, pressing his head to the lectern. Laughter bubbled. Mira scratched behind his ear. "We invite you to walk the grounds, ask questions, plant a sunflower in our memorial garden. And if you're brave, let a dog teach you a new language." Applause grew, tentative at first, then loud. Lena wiped a tear. Theo grinned. Even Jake, leaning on a shovel, tapped the handle to his heart. Cameron stepped forward. "Mira, Valor, can I?" She nodded. He crouched and clicked. Girl, dog, banner fluttering behind, a portrait of resilience. "This will change lives," he said, not as a boast, but a quiet certainty. Later, Mira sat in the herb garden. She glued Cameron's photo into a journal once filled with storm sketches. Beneath it she wrote, "Second chances bloom like lavender in August. Water them with courage." Valor lay beside her, nose in rosemary. From the porch, Lena and Theo watched. He handed her a brochure mock-up. Mira and Valor beneath the title, "The Rowan Program, Where Trust Begins." "Perfect," Lena whispered. As night fell, solar lanterns lit garden paths. The silence no longer felt haunted, but whole. Mira rested her hand on Valor's neck. "Home," she whispered. He leaned into her. And with that, the vow was no longer just spoken. It was alive, living, breathing, rooted in the soil, in scars healed, and in the future they were building. Together, a pale October sun spilled light through the maples, where the old isolation barn once stood. In its place rose the Rowan Pavilion. Cedar walls, wide windows, and the scent of fresh paint and promise. Inside, sunlight danced on padded floors. Soft guitar music filled the space, and Mira sat near a carpeted circle. Valor lying beside her, alert, calm, his tail sweeping slow rhythms. Their teal lanyards read, "Junior Mentor." The first cohort had arrived, 4 autistic children, 3 combat veterans, and 8 dogs, each with a past. First came Ava, 9, with blinking headphones and a plush fox clutched tight. Valor padded over and paused at a respectful distance. Mira signed a greeting, palm to heart, then outward.
Ava mirrored it, then reached toward Valor. He offered his back, and a smile unfolded across her face. Sergeant Leo Ramirez entered next, his stance rigid,
for glory, but responsibility. Elise Rowan's signature stamped every mission. Rebecca carried the file to Lena. Back in the pavilion, Mira addressed the group. My mom trained Vala to protect people who needed a friend. He protected me. Now we'll help your dogs listen the same way. Cameron outlined their first exercise, the trust walk. Handlers would lead their dogs silently, guided only by body language. Mira rolled beside Ava and Marble, a speckled collie. Ava's hand trembled at first, but by the third pass, girl and dog had found a shared rhythm. Sergeant Ramirez followed with Sonny. A hammer clanged outside. Leo flinched. Sonny leaned into his leg, grounding him. Cameron raised his hand, breathed. Leo nodded and continued, one hand resting gently on Sonny's back. Light applause followed. Dr. Patel blinked away tears. Later in her office, Lena read the file Rebecca had delivered. Page 23, Elise's handwriting, missions, rescues, one stubborn lieutenant pulled from rubble. She closed the folder and whispered, "We'll archive this in the Learning Center." Feels good to catalog heroes, Rebecca said, instead of secrets. The session ended in a gratitude circle. Brave, Ava whispered. Lighter, said Leo. Curious, hopeful, calm. Mira glanced at Valor. Heard. Cameron snapped a group photo. Mira centered, Valor at her feet. Ava beside Marble, Leo with Sonny. When he checked the frame, he didn't see just a photo. He saw proof that kindness could be a system. Lena addressed the group, holding the folder. Valor's life is filled with rescues, people, dogs, children. Today, you added to that record. Mira looked up, touching her locket. Mom would be proud. She is, Lena replied. Outside, Valor watched the new handlers leave with their dogs, not trainees anymore, but partners. Another mission begun, another circle widened. The envelope came quietly. No return address, just her name, handwritten. Lena opened it in her office, blinds drawn, heart steady. Lena, I've spent 42 days trying to understand the difference between control and care. You were better at the second. They say I have narcissistic trauma disorder. Treatable if I stop editing myself mid-sentence. So here's the truth, unpolished. I saw the footage, not the spin, your eyes, Mira's, Valor stepping in. That moment undid something in me that drama, no denial, just placement. The letter went into personal correspondence, archive, not hidden, not displayed, just held. Then she looked out the window. Mira's laughter filtered through the trees. Valor barked playfully nearby. She didn't cry. She didn't forgive. She whispered, "We'll make something better with what you gave back." And that was enough. The garden sat on the edge of the campus, where pines softened the wind and sun lingered longer. Once an overgrown runoff zone, it now breathed. Mira pushed open the gate she and Cameron painted together. Valor walked beside her, no longer in uniform, just a bandana faded by sun and small hands. Inside, the world changed. Lavender hedges bordered stone paths. Beds of basil and lemon balm released scent with every brush of wind. Moss patches welcomed bare feet. Wind chimes offered minor chords of comfort. Children played, not loudly, but freely. A boy with noise-canceling headphones giggled as a retriever dropped a rubber ring into his lap. A girl in a wheelchair brushed leaves like piano keys. No shouts, no commands, just trust, eye contact, and quiet encouragement. Cameron sketched beneath the willow. Dottie curled at his feet. His pencil captured the fountain's centerpiece, 2 stone dogs, one sitting, one standing, water flowing like memory between them. Mira and Valor walked the loop, greeted by teen volunteers and returning veterans. They'd built benches from reclaimed oak, pergolas from patience. A wooden sign near the butterfly patch read, "This was always for you." Mira knew it wasn't just for her. They reached the grove she planted last fall. The young rowan trees cast gentle shadows now. Mira sank into a wooden chair. Valor settled beside her, letting out a sigh that sounded like gratitude. She stroked behind his ear. "You remember this place," she whispered, "not because of what it was, but because of what it became." His eyes blinked slow, steady. The sunlight melted into gold through the trees. Every leaf caught fire. Every paw print glowed. A small boy approached, 6, shy, clutching a patchwork stuffed dog. "Is he the one from the video?" the boy asked. Mira nodded. "He is." "Can I—" The words trailed off. Unnecessary. Valor lifted his head. Calm. Mira nodded. The boy knelt, touching the shepherd's fur gently. "I have dreams too, sometimes scary ones, but you're brave." Valor didn't move. He breathed with filtered through the windows like honey through gauze, gentle and full. Mira sat cross-legged on the old armchair, Valor curled beside her, head resting on her calf. In her palm the locket gleamed, its brushed gold worn from years of quiet reverence. She'd opened it many times, to see her mother's photo, to feel close, to remember. But today her fingers found a new ridge beneath the hinge, a soft click. A hidden panel opened, revealing a fragile slip of paper. Mira unfolded it, breath held. "If you are reading this, then you found your way to him. His name may change, but you'll know him by the way he guards your breath, not your body. Some bonds outlive war, outlive blood, outlive time. He is yours now. And you, my child, are never alone." Valor stirred, pressing into her, whimpering low, not worried, just there.
Lena stepped in with therapy charts, paused, and took in the scene. She didn't speak.
She sat beside them on the floor and wrapped Mira in an arm. After a while, Mira passed her the note. Lena read it slowly. A tear fell, not of sorrow, but recognition. She knew, Lena whispered. She knew he'd remember her, Mira said. She wasn't just sending him to protect me. Lena nodded, looking at Valor, his paw now draped across Mira's lap. And he did, every step. For a while, they just stayed, girl, woman, and dog. Bound not by tragedy, but a thread that had endured fire, war, and silence. "You know what that means?" Lena asked. Mira nodded. "It means the story didn't start with me." She looked at the note again. "But I get to decide how it continues." She folded it gently and tucked it back inside the locket. Then she leaned her forehead to Valor's. "Thank you," she whispered. His tail thumped once. The sun rose golden across the hills as a small crowd gathered at the gates. No fanfare, just the ones who mattered, those who remembered. A hand-carved wooden sign stood newly varnished. "Valor's Haven, for the guardians who guard us still." Mira sat in the front row, her hand resting on Valor's back. He sat tall, eyes clear, the old scar on his neck now just a part of his story. Lena approached the mic. Some names, she began, are earned not by noise, but by presence, and some heroes walk on 4 legs. She gestured to the screen. Before we cut the ribbon, Cameron Graves has prepared something that speaks louder than I ever could. The screen flickered to life. Soft piano played. The first image, young Valor in grainy black and white, ears high, eyes knowing. Voiceover. They said he was too gentle to be fierce. But when it mattered, he stood between power and a girl who could not run. Not because he was trained, but because someone once loved him enough to teach him who he was. Footage followed.
Valor shielding Myra in the arena, biting through the collar. Myra whispering, "I'll fix you." People wept freely. The final frame lingered. Myra and Valor in the garden, hand over paw. The bench behind them read, "You stayed, always." Applause rose, quiet and full. Cameron stepped forward, his voice catching. "I didn't understand courage until I saw it in silence, wrapped in fur. And I didn't understand legacy until I met someone who carried it forward without even knowing." Then Theo stepped up with a tablet bearing the new seal of Valor's Haven. "Today, we become the first center in the state to integrate mental health rehabilitation for service dogs. Like veterans, they carry invisible wounds. And this dog," he gestured to Valor, "taught us that healing isn't just muscle, it's memory." More applause, true and lasting. Lena brought forward the navy ribbon. Myra took the scissors. Cameron handed her the ends. "Ready?" Lena whispered. Myra looked at Valor. He didn't move, just held her gaze. The same look he once gave Elise, and then her. The ribbon fell, and with it, the past. Later, as guests mingled and children played with therapy pups in shafts of sun, Myra sat with Theo on a garden wall. She watched Valor lying near a child with tremors, offering calm without touch. "He knows who needs him," she said. "So do you," Theo replied. Myra tilted her head. "Did you ever think we'd get here?" Theo chuckled. "Not when I first saw him flinch at the sound of a zipper." She smiled, then leaned down and kissed Valor's head. "Welcome home," she whispered, and this time his tail wagged, not to please, but because he understood. Twilight gathered gently over Valor's Haven, not empty, not still. Myra and Valor sat beneath the old oak at the edge of the garden. She'd grown taller now, but still light. He, older, grayer, regal, still. He didn't sleep at this hour anymore, as if dusk stirred something older than memory. "I know you see it all," Myra whispered. Far off, the last children headed inside. Hallway lights glowed like scattered stars. Valor's ear twitched at a robin's call. His eyes scanned the field, the garden, the porch, still guarding. Myra pulled a worn fabric scrap from her chair's pouch, the hem of Elise's old jacket. She wrapped it around her wrist and touched it to Valor's chest. "You were the best of them all." He didn't move, just breathed. She leaned into his fur. The rise and fall of his chest felt like a sacred rhythm. Each breath, memory, each exhale, a vow. From the porch, Lena stood quietly, hand over heart. Overhead, long shadows against a lavender sky. "Lena says you still check every hallway. The kids call you the keeper." Valor blinked. That faint amber reflection flickered. Myra laughed gently. "Even Theo says you check his office." A pause. "I think you know you were sent for more than me." She swallowed. "But thank you for staying anyway." Garden lights flicked on, motion-triggered halos. The memorial wall shimmered faintly under their glow. Names etched in stone, human and canine, all remembered. A butterfly landed near Valor's paw. "Promise me," Myra whispered, "when the time comes, you'll let someone else carry the watch?" Valor's breath hitched, then steadied.
You deserve to rest too. Lena remained in the shadows, watching, unmoving. She didn't interrupt. The sun was gone, but the sky still held its echo. Mira stroked Valor's paw. "It's okay," she whispered. "You can sleep now. Just for a bit." But he didn't. He remained still, awake, guarding, as if believing that someone, somewhere, might still need him. The wind rustled the tree above them, and if the final image were ever captured, it would show this: a girl and her dog beneath an old oak, then just the dog, then just his eyes. Lit by the warm porch light, always watching, always guarding, until the world no longer needed to be afraid. In a world that often forgets how to slow down, dogs, especially German shepherds, remind us what really matters: loyalty that doesn't flinch, love without conditions, and the quiet power of simply being there. Valor's story isn't just about a hero in fur. It's about the bond we share with those who don't need words to understand us. Sometimes a dog doesn't just guard the door, they guard our hearts. If you've ever felt that connection, or if you're hoping to deepen it with your own four-legged friend, there's a gentle little corner of the internet I think you'll like. Nothing flashy, just stories, insights, and tools that have helped others build a stronger, more heartfelt partnership with their dog. Feel free to explore if it speaks to you. No pressure. Just something that meant a lot to me, and maybe it will to you too. Thanks for walking this journey with us. Hug your dog a little tighter tonight.